This is the latest disclosure in a report from National Civil Defense Headquarters in Washington. It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life.
Welcome to Dead Radio.
We're not doing that.
How did she come to have sex with a dead man?
Don't call me Radio Unit 91.
You're a dead man. You're a dead man!
He's God here in this radio station.
Place where the dead speak.
Rebel Radio!
I'm a fake? Yes. How'd you like to be dead?
You ever think about doing radio?
My team is dead!
But you're not crazy. You're me. And this is just radio.
By the powers vested in me by the Federal Communications Commission, I command you to get on the microphone in a serious manner and continue this broadcast.
All right.
So big shout out to Mike Bleakley for going there, gave you a thumbs up.
Thanks, Mike.
And then I realized I can thumbs up our videos too. Why haven't I done that every single week?
Me too. I don't
Yeah.
know. I think it's lame.
And big thanks to whoever the mystery third person is who just gave our video a thumbs up.
All right. It's going great.
Yeah.
We haven't even started yet.
Yeah.
Got a big-time podcaster in the studio, and we're already getting likes. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So welcome, everybody, to episode number 218.
This is the latest
Oh,
disclosure.
no. What are we
Good
doing?
job.
So, yeah. Welcome. We have Barry Lamb with us. Is it Doctor?
Yeah, but I don't have anybody ever call me doctor. Not even my students. They just call me by my first name.
Ah, all right. Very cool. Because I saw the PhD thing, and I was looking at the About on the Hi-Fi Nation webpage, hi-fi-nation.com. Phi spelled P-H-I. Yeah, and it
short
said
for philosophy.
PhD. And hyphenation.
I know that's like one of the puns that like makes no sense, but it looks like it too. So
I saw. I don't know why I typed it in wrong, and the Google corrected it to hyphenation, and I went, oh wait, that's funny. That's kind of
yeah.
That's a pun too.
Yeah, it's like a three-way pun, but the hyphenation part doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with anything.
Like hi-fi, like
unintentional
radio,
part,
like that
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, if you don't know, it's Hi-Fi Nation, the podcast based on how do I put this? It's kind of like
Philosophy for the modern age.
philosophy for the modern age. It seems like case study kind of philosophy in a way.
It's like it's as much a storytelling show as it is a philosophy show. So like storytelling show, like find like the latest episode, find two dudes who decided to go to Malaysia.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
I was when Adam first texted me, he's just like, "Hey, this is who's coming on. This is the show. You might have to put your big boy pants on for this one because like I said, oh shit, they're a smart person podcast, and he's just like, yeah. I went, oh no. I listened to Dick Joke podcasts and Dungeons and Dragons podcasts, and that's it. Like TED Talks and Serial and Hi-Fi Nation, stuff like that is just not usually, like the closest thing I get is Hudson Valley Legends, which is a friend of ours, a local podcast.
Yeah.
But yours, I didn't know what to expect because I don't, really listen to this.
I feel like it's something you would never pick up if you didn't have him come in, but I think you might keep listening.
It's really entertaining.
Oh,
I
thank you.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm really
it was,
that's what I'm going for. I'm not going for the people who are already like nerds.
Yeah.
Because like the ones who are actual nerds probably wouldn't care that I have storytelling in my show. They probably just get to the point. Let's have people debate about something.
That's the thing. Like I was like, what is this? These two kids in Malaysia, the YOLO episode. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. And then and then you come in with and then as it progressed, I was like, this is kind of cool. It's like got this Tarantino vibe where it just keeps flipping back and forth to different stories and everything. And
and some guy
really interesting.
meditating on what YOLO means, right?
Yeah,
so that's the philosophy part.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's I downloaded the first one and I downloaded a couple others. The Name of God, I think, is the other one
that's one of my favorites.
That one was intense. That was very
It
interesting.
gives you so many great arguing points when you're talking to religious people.
Well, that's what I thought it was going to be when I first clicked on it.
I don't think that
like,
was
I'm
his
like,
intent,
yeah,
but
let's
that's what I took
bash
away.
religion bashing.
Yeah, I don't.
But
yeah.
it didn't end up like at
Yeah,
all.
I don't tend to bash. I mean, like the very first episode I did, I kind of bashed something, but I don't really. It's not really my personality to bash, at least on radio, like on air.
Yeah.
Like maybe behind the scenes, but I think of it as like for that episode, like the name of God, which is for people like who haven't listened. It's about like whether Christians and Muslims worship the same God. But really, it's not about the issue, but it's about something that happened in the world where that dispute came up and this woman essentially got fired for saying something. And then it's like, well, what kind of question is that? Like how do you figure that out? Like, why are people so sure about that? And if you actually investigate into it, it's like some really difficult stuff. Like, you might, if you're not, I would assume you guys are like atheists or so. Or, yeah,
you assume
correctly.
correctly.
Right. But like even for
Weird.
but even for an atheist, it's kind of like, well, if you have a bunch of different stories, like when are the stories about the same character?
Yeah.
Right. And like that's from your point of view is something that's interesting about Christians and Muslims arguing about something.
Well, it's important to me because not because I believe in it, but because so many other people do, and that affects world policy.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they could get to the point where they go, oh wait, we just disagree on certain things, maybe you could find a little bit more common ground.
No, that's right.
And I think that I mean, not to generalize, but I think that it's probably Christian Americans who are like, fuck that shit. It's not the same God, this, that, and whatever. But it's interesting to have that conversation and to see it from all the different sides.
Yeah, it's true, and quite frankly, I'm not sure most Christian Americans want to even get to the point where they're discussing that issue. They just assume it's going to be one way or another. But like,
and I would say most Christian Americans haven't read the Bible. I've read the Bible. I haven't. I kind of want to read the Torah and the Quran too.
Yeah.
I don't have the patience for that shit.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I'm
still working through the Mueller reports. I got a little ways to go.
Do they have those on audiobooks?
Yes, they do.
Cool.
Yeah.
I was not a religion scholar. In fact, for a long time, I just didn't really have that much patience or interest in it because it's like, I don't want to get into it. Like, I don't want to get into, because when you start getting into it, you start having like theological debates about stuff. But then, when I start doing that episode, I just realized like, I was in one way giving religious people a little bit too much credit ahead of time. I thought, everybody who's a Christian is at least versed in Christian theology. But they're not actually, right? Like the Trinity plays very little role in like most Christians. Like, what is the Trinity? But apparently theologically, for the people who are like heads of the church or like people who's like, it plays a really important role. Like whether Jesus is the same person, the same thing as God is like a big thing to them. But what that even means for most Christians, and I'm not sure they understand. Like how you could be a son and also be the same thing as the thing that is your dad. Like.
Well, I mean, you can't, but you know.
Right. But I mean,
but if that's what they're basing their whole life on, they should probably know.
Yeah, but it turns out like this question of whether Christians and Muslims and Jews worship the same God is like, it's a complicated question that has a lot of like, for people who aren't even religious, it's an interesting question when any two people think about the same thing. Or like when you're reading a story, like is fanfic like talking about the same like world as like the mainstream? Like that's an interesting question too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great analogy actually, because you could take, Stan Lee talking to him about his canon of something, and then somebody has fan fiction. That's not part of the canon, but for that fan, it's still in that same universe.
Yeah. I mean, I guess someone could argue that Christianity is Jewish fanfic.
It is.
And I guess you could argue that Islam is Christian fanfic. No,
So,
I mean, like there's
No,
a way of
just-
there's a way of looking at it where it's like, well, we just had this like tradition, and like, guess what? Like this Jewish tradition, and guess what? Here's this new guy who's the savior, and we're gonna tell that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when they recast the
And
Hulk.
then one right, and then one tradition is like, that's not canon, right? And then later on, another tradition is like, that's not canon.
Yeah.
But like that's one way for like all the atheists to like understand disputes, right?
Yeah.
There are people who are like disputing what's
It's like
canon and what's
Avengers, but a lot of real people die.
The biggest part of that episode was I don't remember the guy's name who was talking. Forgive me because I just stormed through a bunch of your podcasts, so they're all a little blended together. He was talking about speaking with a group of Muslims. He's Christian.
Yeah.
He's speaking with a group of Muslims, and they asked, "Do you worship God?" Yes, I do. And they're like, "All right, so you're okay with me?"
Yeah,
You
and
know?
the Muslim community generally, it's not every Muslim, but most Muslims kind of accept that they're this. They think of themselves as this like extension of the Christian and Jewish tradition.
Yeah.
Right. And
It's so
like,
interesting.
yeah.
But and then that's why I like the podcast so much. It's because I like how you give both sides. You give arguments for both sides, like the death one, your
the
very
Wishes of the
first
Dead.
episode,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Wishes
yeah.
of the Dead. Like there were so many points where I was like, it's stupid, it's
Yeah,
stupid. And
that's
then
what
you all
that's how
sudden-
I think about
And then
it,
you
yeah.
flip the script on me a little bit. I'm like, well, it's not that stupid. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess, you know. And then I started talking to my wife about it, and I was just like, yeah, the Wishes of the Dead, blah, blah. And I was like, why do people carry on their wishes after they're gone? She goes, because they gave a shit when they were here.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like, now I gotta walk back and come up with a new opinion.
Yeah. No, there are things that are really difficult. Like I feel the same way that you feel. Like deep down at the end of all of it, I'm just like, why the fuck do we care about that? But you know, like if you but there are certain situations like with people's bodies, for instance. Like you guys aren't religious people and you're like thinking, look, if you could use somebody's body to save someone's life, who gives a shit whether they don't want it? Like that makes total sense to us.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, like you can see, you know, if that person didn't want their heart.
If that's what they wanted, you know, if that's what they want, I understand that. It's okay. I think it's shitty.
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't do that. But I think there's a line, and I don't think the government should step in and say everyone has to donate their organs, but I also think that they should say everyone has to get immunized.
Yeah, no, I think so.
Or if you want to go to public school, you got to be immunized. You can do whatever you want if you have no contact with the public.
Yeah.
So there's like this weird line there.
It's a tough line,
yeah,
right? Because like you live in society, you benefit from other people.
Yeah, and can you
at least when you
I
die?
I guarantee if I had a child that needed a heart transplant, I would have a completely different opinion on that.
Yeah.
I guarantee that
Mhm.
because it's kind of wasteful to put somebody you're wasting a bunch of wood for the casket, you're wasting a bunch of real estate for the grave, and you're wasting all those organs that could be life-saving.
Yeah.
When they cut them out of you anyway and embalmed you so that your family can have closure with you and a bunch of makeup in a box.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that the society is actually designed the other way, right? Like it's like all wishes of the dead.
Yeah.
Right? Like rich people want to do weird shit with their money, your body, like completely stuff like rights to like image, right? So like Elvis can make or Michael Jackson can make shit tons of money after they're dead because like people can't just print out his like picture and put it on a T-shirt. That's a rights of the dead thing too.
Yeah.
Right? Like the society is designed the other way, completely the other way.
Yeah.
Right?
And in the episode, you mentioned legacy, a person's legacy, and the will is for some people is the ability to carry that on. And what popped in my head when I heard legacy was just like, why are some people so fucking obsessed with making their goddamn mark? Who gives a shit? Live, die, go away.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be some sort of rock star or philanthropist, or just you could just be and go away. And that kind of when I heard legacy, that's what popped in my head.
Do you think that you're in the majority, or do you think you're in the minority?
Minority. I think I'm.
Yeah.
Because I share that opinion. I share that opinion to a point. Like I want to build something. Like I want to build a business that I could leave for my family.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's very important to me. That's something I want to do.
You're goddamn Rockefeller. I knew it.
Not that kind of business. So I would like to build something, still be alive to be proud of it, see my family take it over, and hand over the reins. And not because I don't want to build wealth. I want to build something that my family can be proud of and they can take over and earn for themselves.
Yeah. Different kind of capital. It's not like
like if I could build a business and then I'm 65 years old and then go, well, I could just sell this for $2 million and retire, and then my kids will get $1 million. That's not the same thing as going, no, this is a family business. It's time for you to take over and you pay my bills until I'm dead.
But let's say you've built this business up.
Mm-hmm.
Say you could sell it for $2 million. and you have one child,
Mhm.
and they don't want to take it over.
Then I would sell it for $2 million and not give it to them.
All right, there's that.
If they don't want to
But
take
what
it
if
over,
it
that's
wasn't worth $2
I would-
million? What if it was just like, all right, this is like, whatever. I don't know.
If it wasn't worth anything, then I haven't accomplished what I was setting out
yeah, I
to
guess.
do.
Okay.
Yeah, but,
What-
for a lot of
yeah.
people, it's not. It's for a lot of people, it's like I want the hit song. It's like don't give a shit about the like. If you choose the money or the hit, they probably go with a hit,
Yeah.
right? Or like a book, or like for a lot of people, it's some project that like they want really want like everybody to, or fame or something. Like I wonder what you would. There are rich people who aren't famous, and then there are like famous people who aren't rich. I wonder. Like my guess is that a lot of people would go with the fame. Actually.
Yeah, well, Christina Pazitsky talks about that a lot.
Yeah.
She was on Road Rules, and she was like, it was the worst thing I ever did.
Yeah,
Because you're
see-
famous without being rich.
Yeah, I'd rather
Because
not
she,
be
you know,
famous.
she was like a hot blonde goth girl in the 90s who got paid nothing to go on this show, and she got fame out of it, but no money.
Yeah.
So people would recognize her. People would want to get her autograph. They'd bother the crap. They'd stalk her, stuff like that. But she had no money.
It's true that people
Yeah.
think they want that.
They think they want
They
that,
think
and
they
she
want
thought
that,
she wanted
right?
that beforehand.
Right? And
Not me.
and I guess one of the things I'm seeing here is that I think you think that he thinks he wants like the legacy thing, right? But you're like kind of like what? Like,
There's
whatever.
caveats to it.
Yeah.
So going back to like the business thing, like let's say I owned a deli. I would never own a deli because I'm not passionate about having a deli. If you bought a deli, I think if you,
You gotta be
I
very
think if you buy
passionate
a
about
deli,
cold cuts.
you're going, this is successful, could be a successful business. It will make me money. It's not going to be a job that I love, but it's going to be lucrative. And then you make your kid fucking work there for 15 years, and then they're 28, and you're just
hate
like,
you
it's
for
time
it.
for you to take over the business. And they're like, fuck you, Dad. That's not the situation I'm talking about. I'm talking about like building my production company or opening a distillery like me and
Right.
Chad have been talking about, or something like that. Something that would be fun. But I don't know. I don't have kids yet, but I won't make them work there.
Yeah.
They have to work, but I won't make them work there.
I mean,
and that might be part of it.
The legacy thing is what started this, and the interesting thing is that for rich people, like people who have all of this money, it's clear that the money is not enough, right? Because why else would you care? Like a mile and a half from here at Vassar, right? There's people who with millions and billions of dollars who are alums, and they want to build these buildings with their name on it. They want to have like a school with their name on it. Like the same thing with hospitals and stuff. Right? It's like, okay, it's not the money. And is it about funding like cancer research? Well, you could fund it without putting your name on anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So whatever that is, the thing where they have to put their name on it, on the building that's going to eternally, that's the thing they're after. They have the money. They even can like help people if it's about that. But like the name, whatever that represents to people, seems to be so important to human beings, or at least some human beings.
That thing when you go to the grocery store and they're like, "Would you like to donate $1 to childhood cancer research?" And yeah, sure. Here you go, and they hand you that little heart thing that you gotta sign. You gotta fill your name. I'm always like, I don't need
That's
it.
a
Just
waste.
take
That's
some
a
money.
waste of paper
Here's
and
some
my
more
time.
money. I'm like, here's some money. Just take it.
Yeah.
You asked. Here you go. It's $1. I'm spending $250 on groceries.
Yeah.
You could swing $1. So yeah, that's always been a weird thing. I've always felt weird when somebody's just like, "Look how much I gave." It's just like,
Yeah.
it's always left me uneasy.
I don't know. It's hard to know how many people are the kind of people who are rich and give and don't publicize it, right? Because they're not publicizing it, right? I only know of a couple cases in doing research for that episode that there are people that like that
Like anonymous.
that
donors.
just like there's a famous case of this. There was a guy that was really pivotal in like the Irish peace process. He was like this billionaire, business guy, and today I think he's like 88 and living off of the last bits of his money because he actually gave that all away. But that's the exception, right? The norm is the person who sets up some huge foundation that says like this is where my money's gonna go forever, right?
Yeah.
And so like 300 years from now, we're still gonna see the names Vanderbilt and Carnegie and Rockefeller, I think, and probably,
absolutely.
and probably Bezos and Zuckerberg. Like that's this
Bill
era.
and Melinda Gates.
Yeah, that's this era. We have our tycoons, and they're gonna the same names will be influencing American life, 200 years from now. And so, whatever it is, maybe it's all joined. Maybe the reason why you get rich in the first place is because you want like the legacy thing, and then you end up like putting your name everywhere.
I mean, once you make more than like $10 million, you're just good. And then I think for a while it's greed.
Shit.
You're just like, well, I want
Fine with
I
100 grand.
want 2 helicopters, not just the one. I needed both my houses. I need 2 different helicopters, and then you want a yacht, and then you want this. And then at a certain point, it's just like you can have anything in the whole world. Anything in the whole world when you've got $70 billion or 100 plus in some cases.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing with that?
Yeah. And
I think a lot of it is hubris. And I mean, like Breaking Bad's a good example. Like they wrote that perfectly because it was just like, you can be done now.
Yeah.
And they just won't. And now that we're talking about people that are doing it legally.
Yeah.
But
as a matter of what's actually good for the world, it's if they just, I mean, you either give it away or you just spend it like shit and just like, but put the money back in the system.
yeah.
That's probably the best thing that'll come out of things.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
But like the thing that really bothers me is just people sitting on it.
Yeah.
And then the government helping them sit on it after they die.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because what that whole episode was about was it's not just that there are rich people who want the world to be a certain way after they die. It's that the whole government is designed to implement that. Right. So like if, the story was about like the Hershey chocolate fortune, right? The Hershey chocolate fortune only gets to be the mess that it is because there's courts in Pennsylvania that if somebody deviates from what Hershey wanted, they'll like intervene.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're a libertarian, you're not going to like that. If you're a socialist, you're not going to like all the wealth accumulation. Yeah. I just don't know what like system would think that that's a good idea for the world to do that.
Yeah.
Right. But apparently it's the American system.
It's crazy.
Well, I mean, aside from China, I mean, they're just like, there aren't as many like tech billionaires anywhere else, really, right?
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
I mean, you had
no
oil,
idea.
and now it's tech.
That's tech, yeah.
So,
what got you started with the podcast? First of all, that's probably the first question I should have asked you. We're just like geeking out over the episode.
Oh,
right now.
thanks. Let's see. So I was just a regular, college professor here at Vassar, which is not too far from where we're recording. And 2013, I think, is when I got tenure. No, it was before that, actually. I was called down to West Point at some conference about teaching philosophy to like soldiers, right? Because down there, it's actually required because, if you're going to be in the military and you're going to be in a leadership position, they want to require like ethical thinking classes. And so I was asked down there, and I was sitting around a bunch of guys who were veterans of the wars, and I'm not around people like that a lot. And they were really into philosophy. I thought that's interesting. I've never met like people who were, so different from me, like really not nerds, but like, soldiers, right? But really into this stuff. And so I was sitting there, and at that time I already had this idea, like maybe there could be like a storytelling show, like your public radio type shows, right? Your like TED, This American Life type shows. Yeah. But dedicated to sort of the stuff that I know about. And that show didn't exist. And I had that idea back in 2012. And then in 2015, 3 years later, that show still didn't exist. And I had a sabbatical. And I got really tired of just writing the same kind of papers that nobody reads like people do in my field. And I decided to, well, why don't I have this idea? Why don't I just start and make a pilot episode and see what that's like? And that kind of show is very different from this kind of show because you don't just get to sit down and talk to people. You got to like edit things together in like a documentary.
Yeah, the production value on the show is crazy. Like there's a ton of work.
Yeah.
Just from us doing this and once a week and with even just very little editing. Listening to your show, I was like, "Oh boy, there's a lot of work in this."
Yeah, because every interview I do with people is like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
and there's probably 4 of them per episode.
Yeah,
and then you get to hear a 45-minute episode.
Yeah,
right. So that's how much editing it takes.
It's all whittled down.
Yeah, it's all whittled down, and then I have to write like the narration for it. It's like it's making a documentary. It's a difference between like a talk show and like a documentary show, and so I decided to do that. I bought some like travel like equipment, just like mobile mics. And that's the first thing I did. I like this idea that I had in 2012 was to follow soldiers home from the wars and to have their experiences related to how they thought about the ethics of killing in war. Because that's some heavy shit.
Yeah, for sure.
But I thought that's the perfect pilot because number one, it's in the Hudson Valley. It's like not that far. Number two, I have access to these people because I've already been down there. And number three, it's just an interesting, compelling combination to think of the people who actually are forced to do the fighting and killing and dying, to think about the ethics of that, morality of that kind of thing. And so and that's what I did. I made a pilot that ended up being episode 2 and 3 of the first season, and then at that point I applied for a fellowship down in Duke, which is in Durham, North Carolina, and I got it. So I was given basically 1 year where I got to work full time, and I made that first season in that 1 year. And then from there, things started. I wish I could say like it just took off, but it didn't. You have to do a lot of work and promotion in order to like get people to listen. But that's how it.
And even then, sometimes I talk to a lot of people, musicians, just any business owners around in the area. It's like white noise sometimes trying to promote your stuff. It's just like, oh, that's people scroll, like, oh, that's nice, and they just keep on going past, and then you're just like, if you just stop for a second, click the couple buttons, your job is done. That's all I need from you.
I think for every 100 people you hit up or whatever, 2 get back to you.
Yeah,
that sounds about right. Like,
we go to we'll do outdoor events. Just we'll set up our booth and we'll do some like man on the street kind of stuff. And we're not really selling. Yeah. We have merch. We don't sell a lot of it. We sell water.
Yeah.
And
sell bottled water for $1 to get people to come over.
Yeah, but they come over. We talk to them. Maybe we get one person for 6 hours of us sitting out, or more than that, including setup. 8 hours, an entire day's worth of work.
Yeah, that's just normal.
Yeah, and you just get maybe one listener, maybe, and maybe they hang on. Like maybe they become a fan. That's the other thing too. Yeah. It's like, you get a listener, but they listen to a few episodes and they fall off. I'm gonna kill this fruit fly. I swear to God, it's gonna happen now. Fucker.
Was it right there?
No, you didn't get it. You didn't get it.
I know.
And you always like look up like on the internet like how to make your podcast popular and stuff like that. It's like such a useless sack of like. So first of all, there are people who do give like concrete steps, but then like. It's the same thing. 100 people follow it, and 2 podcasts will succeed. And then people ask, like, well, how did Joe Rogan get all famous? It's like, do you know how famous Joe Rogan was?
Famous already.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. He had a rabid following. Yeah, from Fear Factor alone. That doesn't even count. The Man Show.
And it's like
UFC, all that stuff.
I know.
Yeah.
Like,
he was famous already.
He was so famous,
but he got in on the ground floor of the podcasting thing too. He came in like a year and a half, 2 years after it really started to pick up. I mean, now it's so saturated. But speaking of that, you got a shout out from Adam Ruins Everything.
I did
on Joe Rogan's podcast.
I didn't even know that, and I saw the only reason I found out about it was like nobody listens on YouTube, but I put some episodes on YouTube just to be there. But like nobody, it's like 33 listens or something. But then I suddenly got like 600 subscribes to the YouTube channel. Yeah. Which I was like, why are you subscribing to the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Right. But it's because people watch Joe Rogan on YouTube, and so like he must have said. And so somebody said something, and so I just tweeted out there. I said, "What's going on?" And then Adam was like, "Yeah, I plugged your show."
Yeah.
So because that guy was a philosophy major.
Yeah.
And he wanted to go into philosophy before he became a famous guy. So.
Well, I really like his show. I like him less after listening to that episode, to be honest.
Yeah, I listened to that episode a little bit.
I feel like he needs a team of fact checkers in order to do what he does, and he did not have that while he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. And I mean, Joe Rogan's a very smart guy, even though he says he's a dummy. But he's not a debate artist, and he annihilated him on a few things. For instance, if you've got somebody like if I transition to be a woman right now, do you think it'd be fair if I was wrestling a woman, like someone who was born a woman? If I want to transition to being a woman, that's fine. I don't. But if I did, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
But I would be me. I'd have to shave every day, and I would just be taking estrogen and transitioning into being a woman, and I could, probably beat the crap out of a lot of women. That's not really fair.
That debate in particular, like if you're going to enter into that arena, you better have a like if you were going to, you better have a lot of research under your belt, because that debate in particular is like particularly toxic online.
Yeah, that's tough
because
man.
It is, and because it is people who are knowledgeable about it know a hell of a lot.
Yeah,
right.
The thing is,
the way that I look at it is, if you had a woman who was taking testosterone replacement therapy for 5 years, and then went off it for 1 month so that she wouldn't test positive for TRT, and then she got into an MMA ring, she would destroy anyone in that MMA ring who was not on TRT. You get what I mean? It's just like I'm naturally producing testosterone. My bone structure is different. I'm totally fine with whatever gender, whatever gender you want to be. I'm totally fine with that. But you need to factor in those things. You need to at least talk about it and address it.
I remember this. I remember the person who sparked this debate. Yeah, and it is Fallon Fox. Fallon Fox, she was a mixed martial arts fighter, and it sparked this huge debate, and people were
because she didn't tell anybody, right?
I don't know about that.
No.
I don't know.
She was an MMA fighter that transitioned to a woman.
She ended up winning and beating the crap out of a couple girls in a couple fights, and then she ended up losing.
She got her ass kicked in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think I would be okay with it. Because the thing is, if I'm an MMA fighter, you're an MMA fighter, we're in the same weight class. If I want to fight you and you don't want to fight me, you don't have to.
Right.
They weren't given that option. They weren't given the full information, and that's what I have the biggest problem. If a girl said to me we're gonna fucking throw down right now, I feel like I can take you, that's on her.
You think it's a consent issue?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest part of it.
Yeah.
And
Fallon Fox came out publicly March 5th in an interview from such and blah 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 after 2 initial professional fights. So it wasn't disclosed.
I think in that specific situation, it's a consent issue. As far as a transgendered woman going into a bathroom, I don't think that's a consent issue. I think that's completely ridiculous that any person would have a problem with I wouldn't have a problem with a transgendered man coming into the men's room. I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. And I think you talked about this and you're in
2 episodes.
Yeah, it was women only.
Yeah.
And it's never a problem when it's the other way around.
That's
it's
right.
always a problem when it's a transgendered man. And in this situation, I think you have a leg to stand on when it's a transgendered man. But you didn't listen to those ones yet, right?
Which one?
The for women only.
It's all about
the
there's 2 episodes about the trans issues.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think the crescendo of the episode was people don't really have a problem with it until they feel like it's a man invading women-only spaces.
The episode was about most of the fears about people with penises.
Yeah.
That's what most of the fear is. The fear is that there's a rape threat.
Yeah.
Ultimately there's a rape threat and there's a violence threat.
Yeah.
Whether you think that men are inherently more violent or socialized to be more violent or inherently more rapey or socialized to be more rapey, both of those, which has some kind of unity between, say, conservatives and, say, the feminist movement, have generated a lot, fears about the threat of individuals with penises.
Yeah.
And so that episode talked about most of the fear comes from that.
Actually working with women, I was in a field. I was a broadcast radio engineer for 10 years. No females in that industry, not really. I don't work with them, and now I work with all females. So hearing this, not even needing the podcast, I'm still going to listen to that episode, of course. But listening to them speak about that kind of thing, I was kind of like, fucking hey, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
You're constantly living in that fear.
Yeah.
And just in the back of your head. Not like some is more constant than other, but you just simply walking from your job to the driveway to the parking lot to get your car. That 100 feet it might be.
Yeah.
That 100 feet is stressful. It's anxiety ridden.
That's why Amy just got a gun.
It's crazy.
I mean, like where she works in Poughkeepsie.
Yeah.
I mean, she, especially in the winter when it's dark out at 5 o'clock. I feel like she'll probably never need it statistically.
Yeah.
Almost definitely never need it. But I feel more comfortable, especially that I'm training her and she's competent, with her just that 100 feet to her car, her being armed.
Yeah.
It just levels that playing field. Now the argument could be made that, oh, the gun could be taken away and used against you. Well, yeah, but if the guy's strong enough to take your gun away and use it against you, he was going to rape you anyway.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, the closest analogy, and there's not that much of an analogy because for men it's not the rape threat, but we have like the closest analogy would be for men to be in a situation where they always felt that they were under violent threat. So like if you're white and you're afraid of black neighborhoods, maybe that's the closest thing. Like
or if you're in prison.
Yeah.
If you're a small guy that doesn't have a lot of muscle like Ryan, I mean, you're
I know who you're talking about. It's fine.
Yeah.
So,
but on top of all that, there's like all the harassment stuff that women get.
It's also like in prison, you know what you're getting into. But if you're just walking down the street to go get a sandwich, and you know somebody's whistling
it's
at
just
you.
a lot less likely
It's terrible.
because there's a much smaller demographic that would rape a dude in public. There just is. There's a much larger demographic of men that would rape a woman than men that would rape a man. So just via your sex, you're just safer. So you know.
And so what happened was the feminist arguments that I looked at on those episodes against trans women, so men to women transition.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation.
They kind of generalized the violence threat that men pose to them to trans women, right? And then the question is whether that's a legitimate generalization to make, right? So the idea is like, no, so the feminist the feminist position that is generally against trans inclusion say, look, we're generalizing the right way. People with penises pose a threat to us, right? Whereas the trans people say, no, men pose a threat to you, not trans women. Trans women are not part of the population of men that pose it. And so like, and statistically that's correct, right? Like statistically, like people do cite, 3 cases in the entire world of the last 10 years of someone who may or may not have been a trans woman that raped or attacked. But like for those 3, there's like how many millions of like threats from like men, and then also like it's completely outnumbered by the number of lesbian women who like rape women, because that exists. Like we can't pretend that that's not a threat. Like in women only prisons, it's a major threat. Something like 33% of women in solely same-sex partnerships have domestic violence in that, and it's kind of like, well,
which is above the national average for
it's
cisgendered relationships.
Okay, so it's something like that. So like if we're going to talk about threats, like we need to get the categories clear here, right? But it's not. I don't think it's completely crazy for women to think that people with penises, right, are the ones.
It's okay to be uncomfortable with it. It's okay to have that feeling, but you need to educate yourself, and the people making the rules need to educate themselves. It can't solely be based on numbers. In some arguments could be made that it should be solely based on numbers, but you do have to factor in how people feel. You do. Even if it's not a credible threat, you have to factor that in. You have to work in that education to show people. I mean, just the best way to do it is let's just have unisex bathrooms everywhere and just get rid of the fucking problem.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's right. I mean, like if you think, like sometimes I just the whole bathroom debate is just so absurd, right? Because like you have dogs and I love dogs and you have dogs, and it's like, do dogs give a shit like where they pee and like poop and like why should we?
I went to RuPaul's Drag Con in New York City, and all the bathrooms there were completely unisex, and I'm talking like stalls type bathrooms, and at first it was like it was jarring just because socially it's not a normal thing, but by the end of the day it was just like it didn't really, it almost wasn't a thing anymore. It took a second for me to adjust, like holy shit, but in the end it just didn't matter. Everybody was feeling vulnerable no matter who was in there. So yeah, that kind of thing.
It's a really good like Vassar's actually a really good example of that, because these liberal arts colleges are like super left wing from the get go, right? And so like 3 years ago they decided to make every bathroom unisex, and like we're not talking just about bathrooms too. We're talking about the showers in the dorms, right? Like where everybody both showers and shits and pees and everything. They made everything. There's probably only 2 buildings that still have gendered bathrooms. I work in one of them, and that's just because they're so old, right? That you like the urinals and stuff. So like if you go to the main dining hall, like AC/DC, you go in there. There's 2 bathrooms. It's gender neutral, and it's just like stalls go all the way down. And at first, like students come in and are like uncomfortable because you're not used to like shitting in the next stall with some stranger who's a girl, right?
Yeah, that would be tough. That would be
Right.
but I mean, if it just went all the way to the floor and all the way to the ceiling, I think I'd be fine.
Yeah, in Europe they have that.
Yeah.
And they're like the size. They're about the size of this. They're like this big.
Yeah.
My wingspan. You just hop in, you shut the door behind you, and that's the bathroom that you're in.
It turns out to takes about 2 weeks to get over the discomfort of it. Like then after like whatever. So it turns out like we're just not used to certain things, and then you can just get used to it.
Yeah. I want to. I guess we're 40 minutes in. You want to take a quick break?
Yeah,
Just,
I gotta pee.
Okay.
Right, cool.
Very much. So let's take a quick break. I'm gonna play some music and everything like that. Let me get that queued up. But yeah, we got Barry Lamb here, and he's with he is Hi-Phi Nation, HIPHI Nation.com, at Hi-Phi Nation on Facebook. It's a modern day philosophy podcast. We'll call it that, with stories and all kinds of different viewpoints. It's incredibly interesting. We're going to be back and talk a little bit more. And yeah, stick around.
I swore one day I would take your heart the way you took mine.
You took an oath, said you'd be both, then crafted your excuse.
This is Magus Peter H. Gilmore, High Priest of the Church of Satan. Listen to Dead Radio Podcast, or you won't make it into hell. Hail, Satan!
All right. We're back.
Do you remember like 3 years ago when we were like, oh, we should reach out to the Church of Satan, and we never thought it would actually happen?
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
he came
yeah.
on the show twice.
He doesn't live that far from here.
No,
right?
no.
He's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Won't give away the road, but he's like 3 miles from here, right?
It's
Closer
in
than
like
that.
you can Google where he lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. it
And
just-
if you
it's-
drive around in Poughkeepsie, yes, you can't miss the house.
Yeah. It's this giant black house. I think it's on 44 or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you can find it.
Yeah. But he's like prominent in the community too. Like
Yeah, he's a
like,
great guy.
Wonderful guy. Yeah. If you ever do something on your show that might need the Church of Satan, reach out because
Right.
he will absolutely talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're back with Barry Lamb from Hi-Fi Nation.
That's PHI.
Yeah.
Nation.
It's a podcast dealing with modern philosophy.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to actually ask, because I was talking about this right before we went on break. I was talking to someone at Crafted Cup about empathy and sympathy and empathy.
Yeah.
And I don't know what came up with, how it came up, but I mentioned I think it was Ohio senator or representative or anything. He was like very big into the like very anti-gay. Anti-gay rights and everything like that. And his son came out as gay.
As it always goes.
And he flipped. He spun around, and I want to say, and I could be screwing this up. I think he ended up losing his position because he changed his stance on the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to your show. I hear a lot of like the both side thing, and that's. I find that like a lot of people that have any kind of criticism, like the religious one, for instance,
right.
or we were talking about women on their way to, being worried about men.
Yeah.
There was a time where I thought that would be a silly notion, but now speaking to everybody, now it's just like wouldn't say I have empathy, but if somebody, I actually. I would say I do, because I do know someone who was attacked, a woman that was, attacked and killed due to domestic violence. But I don't know where I was going with
You were
this.
you're talking about empathy and sympathy. And are you saying that you find it interesting that before you encountered an individual in your own life that had these experiences, you didn't have that kind of
I think, yeah, and I think the basis of your show kind of allows people to kind of dip their, to take a toe into the water of empathy, just so you can hear a story from the other side, and that's what's really interesting about philosophy to me. And I'm not. I've never really read into the science or anything like that, but it's just about asking questions.
It's not science, it's philosophy.
Well,
yeah. The philosophy of philosophy.
Whatever. But yeah, let's see. I'm not that bright. But if I've always been a person who tries to see both sides as best as I can, to a fault almost, where it kind of hinders me in making a decision.
Yeah, I've joked a lot. Like if you're just steadfast and you sound like you're saying a smart thing, eventually you can get them to your side.
Because I start guessing, because I start second guessing, like, all right, well, I don't know as much as this person knows, but I don't know that he might be full of shit.
Yeah, and sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm fucking with you. But the example was with music. Like if we're just like, well, check this out. I mean, but this is interesting, and we're just like, within a week we'll get him like in the shitty band. Like it was like a joke.
Yeah.
It's not serious, but
so you're easily persuadable. Is it?
Yeah. But I think that's kind of a good quality in some ways. I really do.
Only because I sit back and I can't stop thinking about, how does that person feel about how I'm approaching something, and
that's a good thing.
I guess, but it does hinder me a lot. And, like I said, listening to your show, I kind of got that.
How does it hinder you? Does it hinder you in that you can't make a decisive decision? About
Yeah, like I
something,
can't make I'm unable to make a good, a decisive action.
Right.
It's really kind of strange. Like I play with my head. Well, what if they're thinking this, or what if they're thinking this, when I really should just be going with my, not necessarily going with my gut. I should have some sort of critical thinking to the situation.
Yeah.
I'm speaking of something specifically that happened recently. I'm not going to go into detail, but I paused for longer than I should have, and it created a bigger issue because I sat there and tried to weigh everything out and try to have some sort of,
Yeah.
Does this affect you as a manager at Crafted Cup?
It's not. Yes, but it doesn't have anything. Not anymore. It's funny. Like now I'm a steamroller now.
The funny thing about you is, and you know this, I'm not saying anything new, is your initial response is like, "What the fuck?" Like you get pissed off, and your visceral reaction, and then if the person in this might be me, it might be Tanner, it might be Brooke, goes like, okay, that wasn't cool. That's not the correct response. Let's talk about whatever it is. And then every time you go like, I was kind of a dick. I'm sorry. Let's talk about it. And you always handle that very well, which I think is a really good, like that introspective, like knowing that I was acting on emotion. I've thought about it. I'm a little bit more reasonable now. And then you get to like a normal place. But what I'm talking about is like if there's like some issue, like let's say it's gun control, like just throwing that out there, like you can be like if this is the middle, you can be swayed a good 30% in either direction with a good argument.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. A good argument will just give me pause because I have no rebuttal.
That's a positive. I think that's a positive quality. If it actually hinders,
I didn't mean to make this about me.
Yeah, but if it hinders you in a certain circumstance, like my reaction is going to be, is it hindering you because the situation is such? Like another way of putting this is, when there's a problem, I'm not sure whether the problem is going to be me or the situation. Like that's how I feel about a lot of things, right? So like this is true of generally like a lot of issues. Like so, for instance, the disability movement, right? A lot of them are trying to advocate this position. Like it's not actually our problem; it's like the world. Like if you actually made things where it's not stairs but ramps, then like we wouldn't have that big of a problem. Everybody can use a ramp, right? And so like with respect to being indecisive about certain things, like an issue, like I feel like it's a good thing that there are people in the world that are swayable like you are, like 30% of the way with respect to good arguments. And people think that it's just really bad in the world if there are some people where you can't sway them at all. They are so steadfast in their position, as we know a lot of people are, that no matter what you tell them, they're even going to be stronger. Like we know this from science, that there are a lot of people where they start off with a position. The more arguments you give against it, the stronger they are in their position.
Like flat earthers.
It's the other
space is
right,
fake,
right? And it's like a lot of people think that that's a bad
Eddie
thing.
Bravo.
Yeah, it is a bad thing, but amongst the entire population of human beings and all of our differentness, right? The fact that there are some people who are like that might not be a bad thing. Like they might be good. Like Eddie Bravo might be good because of the way he is. He might be good in a certain situation which requires somebody to be like that. Yeah. And if you got caught
it's great in a situation when I'm laughing at him actively.
Right? But I think like Joe talks about him being really good at jiu-jitsu because of that.
Yeah.
He's just like convinced that there's a way to counter this move. In like jiu-jitsu, like nobody says, oh, once you get in that situation, you can't do it. Or like maybe that's a good thing in that circumstance. And like what you were describing was something like maybe I don't know the circumstance you're talking about, but I mean, I think there should be space for people who are indecisive, like, that can be brought in a certain way.
Yeah. It's okay to be contemplative. I've had 4 beers. Contemplative.
I'm gonna look that up.
Contemplative. If you want to sound it out,
all right.
About
see, now I know what it means.
About certain decisions. But like what I'm talking about with you is that like maybe it's not gullible's not the right word. It's not, but I almost had you convinced that daylight savings time went back 2 hours.
Oh yeah, I was Googling for a solid 5-10 minutes. Like what the fuck?
He texted me, when does daylight savings time start? And I was like, it starts tomorrow at 6 a.m., but they're rolling it back 2 hours this year because of global warming. And he goes, what? With a question mark and exclamation point. And I was like, yeah, dude, I heard it on NPR.
I was like, well, it's got to be real.
So he's easy to fuck with. Is like what you're saying. Yeah.
So that part of you is gullible, but that's not what we're talking about. I just wanted to tell that story. But where, like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I can't think of a good example right now. But if, like, we disagreed on something, and if you're measured and think about your argument, you'll listen, which is good, and you'll process that. And it's unlike like people like Donald Trump. Like the last person who told him a fact is the thing that he thinks.
Yeah,
you're not like that. You're you're yourself as a person. But if I give you a good argument, you listen, and then if Brooke gives you a better argument, you listen to her.
Goddamn right.
You know, even if she gives you a you give her a slightly worse argument, you're probably going to listen to her. But
and you picked up on that's exact. I try to do that with the show, right? I think good philosophy when presented to people isn't overly opinionated. I think it's charitable. That's the word we use in philosophy. Like be charitable, like which is like look for the best that side has to offer. Like that's just generally what we teach our students to do, right? That's what I think is like the best kind of thinking. It's like the idea is you're likelier to have made a mistake than you are to be right. That just seems like a general like good kind of self-critical position to have. Which is not to say that I don't have opinions about this stuff. It's just that generally on my show, the Wishes of the Dead is an exception because I actually like stated my position, but generally I don't like to state a position. There are other podcasts that do, you know, like that, you know,
like this one.
Yeah, yeah, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah. The YOLO thing. I really got to get in. I really got to talk about it.
Can we just do What Are You Drinking really quick and get out of the way?
Yeah, sure.
Because normally, I think I mentioned we do a segment every episode, just like what we're drinking. And I actually made this, so I don't... It's What Are You Drinking? Yeah, so...
So we have production too.
Yeah. It's all there. So we'll just run through all the things we're drinking really quick.
You guys get paid for this as sponsors?
No.
Oh, jeez. You need to get a sponsorship.
No.
Yeah, well,
we got Patreon.
Okay.
It pays for the show in that what it costs us to have our web hosting and stuff like that, but it's not very much.
Okay.
But it's not like we're not working on it.
It's also, it's like just a staple bit that we've done since episode 1 almost.
Yeah.
But
so you're drinking Poland Spring.
That's right.
How is it?
Spring.
Delicious.
And again,
Very
you're welcome to try anything if you'd like, but no pressure, of course. I am drinking. So I just opened another one up because this is the last one. I'm probably going to drink it. Pitchfork hard cider. What do you think?
I didn't like it at first, and then I had that second, and it was really good. I really actually do like it.
It's made here in Poughkeepsie. 6.9% alcohol. Comes in a 6-pack for about $13.
I really want to get these guys
at halftime.
on the show.
Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to him.
Talk about Cedre. And also,
so it's unfiltered. It's very dry. It's very bubbly. I think it's a great cider.
Solid cider.
Yeah,
it's not as dry as Bad Seed.
No.
That's like fucking bone
But
dry.
that's probably why it's 7%.
All right, Pitchfork. If you know anybody who knows Pitchfork,
yeah.
Sponsor the show.
I'm gonna reach out. I'm gonna reach out to him. Like a lot of times, we have like local breweries come in, and they just bring us beers. We drink them. We talk about them, and you know, I'm cool with that. I would love to do like a read, like a spot, for any of these places. So, but most of them are bigger than we are. So
but it's sometimes it's good for the brands just to be in the.
Yeah,
in like
the
dipping
local,
their
like ethos,
swimming
like the
around,
local,
like having some stuff, like even if it's not immediately going to make them money.
Well, the thing is, for a show our size, a live read, $25.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's not a lot. I mean, if they gave us free fucking cider, I would do it. Just 2 6-packs a week. We're good. You are the official cider of the Dead Radio podcast. So I'm also drinking my own mead. Which, what do you think?
Came out
Like
great.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really drying out.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It feels it tastes a lot drier than I'm used to from you.
Yeah. So I think it's done, and I'm gonna add a little bit of
What kind of honey did you use?
wildflower.
Oh, okay.
And it's a dandelion mead too.
Ah,
so
wow.
dandelion tea, honey, yeast.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I didn't want to jump out and say it,
Yeah.
but yeah. And look
so I'm gonna
stupid
add
again.
I'm gonna add a little bit of malt extract to this, and dry hop it. I know you won't be able to drink it, and I'm gonna enter it in Cousins Ale Works homebrew competition.
Oh yeah.
As an experimental beer, because you just have to add a little bit of malt to call it a beer. So legally, even though all the alcohol is made from honey.
Barry
So-
gave me the
That's cool.
eyes just
Yeah.
now. I have celiac. I can't have.
Yeah,
gluten.
he's not a woke gluten-free Vassar student.
Yeah. No, I have
No,
to.
celiac. I've
Yeah.
known a lot of people with
It stinks.
Yeah.
celiac. Yeah.
So he really has
And
it.
explaining it to people is just like it's exhausting sometimes. Like, what pastries are good?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Never had 'em.
I can't even get too close to them.
So I'm also drinking St. Pauli Girl because someone left them in my Airbnb downstairs. So I have 4 St. Pauli Girls. I mean, it's fine. It's just, it's like a...
It's a beer.
Imagine like
It's
a
a beer in
Stella.
a bottle.
Imagine like a Stella, but lagered. It's good. I like it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just light German beer.
Well, whatever.
Totally fine. Not great, but
Thanks
fine.
for not putting malt in the mead.
All right. Well, I'm only going to do like a bottle this big
Yeah.
for that.
Sure.
Because,
I want to talk about YOLO.
all right, let's
All
do
right.
it.
So that people know why we're talking about YOLO. First.
So the
That's
latest.
the last episode.
Well, yeah,
of
the last
season,
episode.
you're season 3.
Season
Yeah.
3. Yeah.
Oh, we should mention you're doing season 4,
I am doing season 4.
but it's a theme to it.
Yeah, that's right. So the show's on the Slate Network. It started season 3. We're on the 3rd season. I've been doing 10 episodes each season. And season 4 is going to be the first season that is going to be themed. The whole season's theme is the criminal justice system. So I'm going to look at the philosophical foundations of that system. So the idea is I'm going to go look at different parts of the system and what assumptions are they making, and are those assumptions correct? And of course, I think everybody thinks that the criminal justice system is pretty fucked up.
Yeah, I don't think
I
there's
I can't
anybody
imagine a
out there.
person who'd be like, yeah, it's perfect.
It's perfect. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You should probably be in
Yeah.
the system.
Yeah.
And so that's what
how
I'm-
many millions of dollars do you have in the bank?
Yeah, that's right. So
yeah.
I'm going to, and I haven't started working on it yet because I just released the end of season 3. So the end of season 3 just came out this Saturday, and it's about YOLO.
You only live once.
Right.
And it was infuriating to listen to. I was
Why is that?
yelling at just listening to these kids. I gotta say kids now because I'm 36 and you have to.
Yeah, I'm so middle aged now, or quarter aged, or whatever, that I seriously thought I was 37 for a whole 2 days. I had no idea how old I was.
And these kids we're talking about are 25. They're not
Yeah.
like
Yeah, all right. So but they're talking about you only live once. I mean, just doing things for the sake of an experience and this and that. But the entire time, I'm like, it's your experience. It's not. I don't know if they were feeling like. I got the feeling from the kids and literally heard half a sentence from most of them. I got the feeling that if you aren't doing that, then there's something wrong with you. Like
You're a square.
Yeah, you're a square, or you're not. You're missing out and everything like that. And it's just like that's what was bothering me because the arrogance kind of behind the comment.
Yeah, and those. So you're talking about the 2 guys who went into the jungle.
Well, there's them too.
Okay,
Like,
yeah.
Even
I
just
think
like the
the
snippets of interviews.
the maddening thing where like the kids like kind of like on the street kind of.
Oh, the kids on the street.
Yeah,
The people
it's
on the street.
pretty much
Yeah.
sounded like someone that I probably served at the coffee shop at one point. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are not kids. Some of them were like older people. And one of those. So there's a bunch of segments on it where I just go to like the San Diego beach somewhere, and then I just like went up to people and I said, "What does a YOLO mean to you?" You know, and so and I got some interesting ones. There was like some that didn't make it to the show. There was like this Brazilian lady. She's probably younger than me. Girl, I guess, who was like just up and traveled the U.S. by herself for like 3 weeks, and just partied in like Vegas. I guess single woman in Vegas, that's like fun. and there are people doing all that. And then but there were a lot, at least in Southern California, of people who were like, yeah, YOLO is adventure, YOLO is spontaneity, YOLO is risk taking. That's what. And so for people who haven't listened to the episode, the episode, most of the episode follows two guys who decide, like college buddies, who decide to go into the Malaysian jungle naked to do Naked and Afraid, but with like no training and like not much of anything else.
I was like losing my
I
was losing my mind.
Well, yeah, but they kind of fucked up, right? You heard that.
Honestly,
they should have died.
The show,
and
all the YouTube videos that they said they watched, they probably should have been okay. They should have.
They should have done better than they did.
Themselves. Boy, oh boy, did they fuck up. Day
so
one.
It's a funny.
They just
don't give away too much, but Jesus.
Let's just start with, if you're gonna plan a survival excursion, go camping first.
Yeah. Just go into the fucking mountains. You can go over to the Catskills. You're still near civilization. You can get the fuck out of there when you get into trouble. Don't go to Malaysia.
Just do a little bit more internet research than Google Maps.
All right.
Yeah.
And they printed them out.
They kind of wanted to be in a real jungle, not a farm, but not to give away too much. And also, if you're going to store your machete, don't stab it into the ground. Now, the reason I'm going to give is not the reason that you're thinking of. The reason I'm going to give is because it dulls out your machete. So it was a bad idea in the first place.
When that kid describes
it
that,
can get way worse.
I was in the car. I was listening to the episode. I was on my way into work to open the place. So it's like 5:50 in the morning. I'm just sitting in my car waiting to just, screaming in my mind, listening to your podcast. And when he did that, I actually out loud went, ah!
That's what I know. That's how I know I did a good job, like getting that story from them and putting it together. Because like if you had that moment, that was like, that's perfect. That's what you're going for in radio.
Yeah,
right?
And we've talked about this. The thing that I can't watch on YouTube. Like I had to stop watching Tosh.0 because it always started off with some dumb skater kid or kid on a bike, and it's just horrible, like mechanical injury, and you just realize people are just made of meat.
Yeah. Oh god.
And I can't.
I love that shit.
I was serious.
So
like
hard.
I was changing sheets on a bed in my Airbnb, and I just went.
Dude, and we're all old enough. We're all about the same age to like remember the Jackass days.
Yeah.
Right. And there were things.
I had to stop watching that show too.
Yeah. I mean, like,
not me.
I remember. It was so hard. There was the scene where the cameraman passed out, like because it was so awful to look at.
Like I can handle road rash. I can handle people being beat up. I can watch MMA, anything like that. But as soon as mechanical injury, limbs bent wrong ways, bones sticking out, and major like muscle lacerations.
Lacerations is where I have a hard time. When I heard about that slice, and also it was the situation. They're in Malaysia. I mean, I guess I got to give a little bit away. The guy cut his hand really badly. Listen to the episode. He cut his hand really badly, and I'm like, you're in the jungle, you're naked, and you're in Malaysia. Tape that shit up and get the fuck out of there.
Get to the nearest goddamn hospital and get some antibiotics.
I'm like, he's got to go to the hospital in Malaysia. I don't know what that's like. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I don't know. About that.
And then they went back out.
He took a few days to recover. And then he goes back out.
One day.
Was it just one?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they said they hung out for.
No,
like
he got taped up.
Yeah, they went back.
And they went back out.
That's insanity.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's.
You got to give them a little credit for doing it. They're still stupid. But you got to give him a little credit for sticking to their guns on that one, because that guy had no use of that hand the whole time, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I've had some pretty major cuts. Like, I got scars all over my stuff that's needed stitches and shit like that. It takes like a month.
Sure.
For shit to heal, especially if you got to get stitches.
And he was getting rained on for the next 20 days. Remember that? Remember, because it rained every night.
Yeah.
Right?
It's Malaysia. Of course it rained every night.
I had my gallbladder removed. I was back to work on Monday.
Hey, you had your gallbladder removed and you almost died because you couldn't fucking breathe good.
Yeah. I mean, the dude has a YOLO tattoo. I mean, that's
I know he said that, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be an interesting show." That was the first episode I listened to. I was just like, "Oh my god, what is this?"
So, so going back, what I wanted to talk about was, the past few months I've been working on some major projects, so I haven't been able to concentrate on the show. So sorry to the audience, sorry to Ryan, but I haven't been booking very well. And I was listening to that last episode. I was like, you know what? I talked to him almost a year ago at this point. It's been since like a couple semesters back, and I was like, I should invite him back on the show for sure. So I emailed you while I was listening to the last episode, and he was just like, well, this is my last Monday in Poughkeepsie, so it's this Monday or
August, because I'm going to leave for July.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, well, if you want to do it, let's do it.
California. That's where I'm from. And
okay.
Visit family there.
I thought you were like, I'm going to like Budapest. Huh?
No.
YOLO.
Student naked and afraid in Malaysia.
Yeah. I'm not going to do much more traveling. I've been traveling too much. But yeah, so...
Yeah, so I'm really glad that this worked out.
Yeah, it worked out really nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's quick prep to like listen to a bunch of episodes, like in the short term.
So as soon as you expressed some interest, I was like, so he might be coming on. This is the last episode. You were going to be so angry.
And it really was. It was just like, I mean, first of all, we already had the phrase carpe diem.
Yeah.
And what really was interesting was you brought up Memento Mori as well, or Valar Morghulis to all those Game of Thrones fans out there.
Or if you're Rick from Hudson Valley Tattoo Company, it's Momento.
Memento. Oh God.
Oh, boy. Yeah. So, but there's that as well. It's just like I get the reasoning behind it. Yeah, you're gonna die one day. You might as well get the most out of life, but I think that the most out of life, that term is relative to where you are in life. Like the most out of life for me is just doing a podcast, owning a house, married to my wife. Like that's fine. I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good with that. Yeah. And like we go on trips and this and that. We try to take. We're going to Rhode Island. I've never been to Rhode Island. What was 5 hours from here with a beach? Rhode Island. So we're going. Things like that, but. Like skydiving, if I'm like, YOLO, I have to go skydiving, kinda,
Yeah, I'm
but
not going
I get that.
I might go if it comes up, but I'm not going to seek it out. Not because of the risk, just because it's not in my wheelhouse. That's not part of living to me.
I think the core of it is great, but 80% of the population are douchebags.
What was that dude? What was that rapper's name?
Drake.
No, it wasn't Drake. I know Drake coined the term. The guy that 120,
Allegedly.
120 miles an hour, drunk as fuck, YOLO, and then ends up fucking dying like 15 minutes later.
Yeah.
So I think the core of it is great.
Yeah.
If you're living your life, you should be happy. You should be doing things that make you happy, right? What makes you happy are those things that you just said. Then you should do those things.
Yeah.
If not owning a house and going to Europe makes more sense for you, you should do that. But you shouldn't do what that rapper did. That was him deriving joy from people going, that guy's awesome. Which goes right back to what we were talking about earlier with the legacy thing, the Rockefellers and all that shit. They derive way more joy with people going, that guy kicked ass, rather than I just have a really good time with my wife and we're going to Rhode Island. I mean, if that's
when you say it like that.
but
sounds pretty
but
lame.
if that's what makes you happy, you should fucking do that. Like for me, like I have a piece of shit car and 2 motorcycles. I don't need 2 motorcycles, but I have 2 motorcycles because I like the 2 motorcycles more than the car. I would rather have 2 motorcycles than a nicer car. That's what makes me happy. And, you know, like I have a fucking $1,500 electric skateboard. No one needs that. No one in the whole world needs that. It's a dangerous, stupid thing to have that costs $1,500, but it makes me happy. So I have it.
What concerned me was one of the people on the street that you interviewed saying having no regrets.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I think anyone who has no regrets is lying to themselves.
or they're insane.
Or they're yeah. I mean, I wouldn't put it as insane, but like there's 2 ways to have no regrets. One is to make all the decisions that you don't have regrets, and the other one is just not be regretful as a person.
Yeah.
You do all kinds of shit and you never have any regrets.
Yeah, like when do you
Right?
when do you draw the line between you're living how you want to live and you're a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
But I mean, like how many people have you ever gone like I shouldn't have had that extra slice of pizza?
YOLO.
That's a regret. Like
Yeah, but if you
but YOLO is I should eat pizza until I throw up. Whereas like 15 minutes later you're like I shouldn't have fucking done that.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem with YOLO is you're
forced to sit in your bad decision.
Yeah, you're making decisions that feel good cuz you're alive. Assuming that you won't be able to experience these things because you're going to die.
Yeah.
But when you take that mindset into everyday life, you wind up eating a full fucking pepperoni pizza every goddamn day.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
You need to have a look to the future to say I'm going to do what I need to do now to be happy later. Sure, you can get
delayed gratification. Yeah,
you can get but delayed gratification isn't. I don't think that's the right because you can go, okay, I'm going to eat this pizza now. I'm going to feel really good. And then the next day, you'd be like, I'm going to eat another pizza because it feels really good. But if you do that 365 days a year, you're going to die really soon.
Yeah.
And that's not that's it's not just about extending your life. It's about extending the quality of your life. So yeah, go skydiving if that's something you're into, because statistically you're probably not going to die. But if you skydive every day, you are definitely going to die. You're going to die from skydiving.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think hang gliding is like the most fatal one. Like
that is the most terrifying shit. What
but
in your
it's the
brain
one I want
makes
to
you
do.
want to dive off a fucking cliff?
Yeah, but that's the most fatal one, though. I think it is the most fatal.
It is.
By far.
I know.
By far.
But my Instagram feed keeps showing me that I want to do it.
Yeah.
There's these like ramps off of mountains and you just run down.
What about those gliders?
Float away.
What about the not the hang gliders?
The fucking squirrel suits?
The squirrel suits.
That's way more dangerous than hang gliding.
Yeah, that's got to be.
They drop them out of plane and they're like, I watched this guy go through this rock formation. It was like this giant donuts, you know, and looked like Bob's Big Boy in the middle of the
I know
desert.
exactly.
And he just went thoop, straight through it.
Exactly the rock
didn't
formation.
His wife try it and she fucked it up and died.
Yeah, that rock formation
What
has
about
killed
what
a
about
couple
that?
hundred people.
What about that free climbing dude? You know that dude?
Oh,
right, yeah.
Have you watched Free Solo?
No.
You should watch. You should get really high. Really, like take an edible.
What's it called?
It's called Free Solo.
This guy who goes rock climbing
he
without
climbed
any
El
equipment.
Capitan.
Oh, it's a goddamn documentary?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't watch
Just
that.
okay.
Scared the shit out of me.
So here's what he doesn't die.
Yeah.
Like you know that going in. But I want you to get super high and get really paranoid and start watching that movie. You will not make it through.
Nah, I won't make it through sober.
Dude.
Heights is a scary thing.
Let me tell you guys a story about when I watched this movie. So Amy's sleeping and she's a very light sleeper, so I have to watch TV with the subtitles on. And I was towards the end of this movie, I was seriously standing next to the bed watching because I couldn't sit still, and I was just
doing
I
this
mean
with
I
your
didn't
feet
have
the
I
whole
didn't have a
time.
microphone, but I was just rocking back and forth like freaking the fuck out. This guy climbed El Capitan, which is not only a Mac OS operating system.
I was formulating. I was like, "Come on, get it,
but
get it."
It is a huge rock face in
Yosemite.
Yellowstone,
Yeah,
Yosemite.
I think it's Yosemite, yeah.
So there are points towards the bottom in the beginning where he is climbing cracks smaller than like this, like 1/8 of an inch. And he's just in them like this and using his body just to like have friction. And that's the easy part. And then there's this one part where he has to like karate kick to a crack and then stretch over to the crack with his other hand and pull himself over. And they're like, does he do the karate kick or does he jump? And this and that.
This is making me sick thinking about it.
It is horrifying.
Yeah.
And you've got 6 people who are also climbing along with him using ropes with cameras.
Which is dangerous too.
And this guy's been living out of a van for like 20 years, just climbing rock faces.
YOLO.
And they were doing this for a long... And he went up there on a severely sprained ankle, too. And he was just, today's the day. Got up at 3 a.m, started climbing in the dark, made it to the top.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a sport. Like, you know he lives. Like,
Yeah.
you know that from the beginning. But
I mean, they're clearly like over the top YOLO people out there. I'm wondering what it is for like us normal people. Like we're never gonna do that, and I'm not inclined to do any of this stuff like skydiving and hang glide. Nothing. I'm not inclined to do any of it.
Out of fear or out of just no desire?
Well, I'm deathly afraid of heights. First of all,
Me too, man.
But it's not like
I was up on an 8-foot ladder the other day,
Yeah.
and it makes me sick.
Yeah, I'm definitely afraid of heights. But even then, it's like I feel no motivation. I'm like you. I actually feel no motivation. Like hang out with my kids,
Well,
my wife is good enough for me.
With skydiving, I'm afraid of. I am not terrified of heights, but I am afraid of heights. But given the chance to go skydiving, I would go skydiving. I'm not gonna like run down to skydive the ranch and like one weekend and just here you go, and just go up. It's one of those things where if it presents itself, maybe I'll do it, or most likely I'll do it. But I'm not gonna seek it out.
Because I feel like there's like a normal life version of this, right? So it has nothing to do with seeking adventure, but like stuff to do with your career.
Buy a fucking house, man.
Yeah.
You want an adrenaline dump? Write a check for $13,000 at the closing.
Yeah.
You're like,
I've had that. Yeah.
You start getting dizzy.
Being as poor as you are as soon as you close. Yeah.
I walked in with $160,000 and walked out with nothing.
Negative $160,000.
I remember. I don't even remember the closing. It was it's like a blur. So, yeah like that. Yeah.
So, funny aside, when you skydive, I've never been skydiving, but I've seen videos. Like, you can't hear anything. It's all the wind blowing past you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go out to Gardner, right at the intersection where you see the sign for Tuttletown Distilling Company,
I know what you're gonna.
just pull over and just stand there. And you just hear screaming from the sky. Just the people jumping out of airplanes screaming their fucking heads off. It's crazy that you can, but there's nothing between you. They're only, they're a half mile away, and they're screaming at the top of their lungs, and you just hear it. You can hear it all day long.
Is it woo woo? I'm having so much fun.
No, it is a death scream.
That's interesting because the only situation I've been in close to that, besides watching 4th of July shows where people do parachuting and stuff, was when I'm like hanging out at West Point and they have the paratrooper team, right? Because like they have sports teams and then they have the paratroopers and they just get up there in a black helicopter. They're not all that high up in the air, and then they just jump out. But like those guys, it's just all business, right? This is like their 1,500th jump, and like they're just training to go to war, so they got their guns and like all this stuff. And it's just like cool as a cucumber, right? It's just like all business, all training, and that was fascinating to see, right? To like something drove them to be on the paratrooping team, so they it's not like they're not being adventurous. But then
they got to be the best.
But they're like training to be like the pros.
They watch Band of Brothers a few
Yeah.
dozen times.
If you ever want to go down to like a YouTube wormhole, check out like halo jumping and how it works.
Halo jump. I don't know.
High altitude, low opening.
Yeah, yeah.
God.
It's when these guys they like go into countries that we shouldn't fucking be in, and they're at like 60,000 feet. There's no oxygen.
Yeah.
Out of
they
some
got
Black Ops airplane that no one knows about, and they jump out and then just glide in, and they jump out like 1,000 miles away from where they're supposed to land, and they just slowly fall. It's like a 20-minute free fall, and then they open that parachute at like 1,000 feet. Yeah.
This is like special ops type stuff.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, there's all these like simulations they have online, like how it works. I mean, but do you remember when the was it this Discovery, the shuttle that broke up on it, re-entry?
Challenger?
No, the Challenger blew up on takeoff.
On the re-entry?
Yeah, I think it was Discovery, but they were finding debris for almost 1,200 miles.
Wow.
So you got to think, like, that kind of makes sense. You're that high up, flying at X amount miles an hour.
What are you thinking about when you're plummeting to the earth and you got 20 minutes to kill?
God.
Can you imagine 20 minutes free falling?
I mean, if you're a pro, right, and you've done that, you know.
But I mean,
know,
like the
there's
test jumps, they're probably like they start off in Vegas, Area 51.
Yeah.
And then they're landing in fucking Virginia. You know, I mean,
it's not that much, but but I think that when I hear stories like that, it's just shocking to me that we're all the same species. Like when you see like,
it's like how do you
amazing
do
people,
that
like
and I
special
can't
ops,
do that?
special ops people in particular, right? It's like this guy, I can see he's doing whatever, like, you know, when those fitness guys, like like in the army, and they can, you know, sit in the bucket like in a chamber of ice for an hour and then come out and shoot like the gun like right between the eyes of like some dummy and like superhuman beings, right? And I'm sitting around and like getting heartburn from like.
I think it goes
for me. It's like
just,
hour 6 of standing, and I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
I think there's a part where genetics, physical. I would you're physically. Yeah, that's all well and good if you're physically have the right attributes, but there's a mental part.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
In those superhumans that you just they're wired completely different.
Which is why I think the YOLO people are wired differently. I think the YOLO
there
people,
it goes. It comes back around.
No,
Sure.
I think that the YOLO people are the kind of people who might genuinely have an existential crisis if they can't do something like that. Right? Like their lives feel meaningless.
I
to
get
them.
certain aspects of it. I do. To go like, you know what? I'm not going to buy a house because I want to go to Europe before I'm 30.
I bought a house and then went to Europe.
Yeah.
Stick that in your pipe and smoke it.
That's all because your wife is really good with
it's
money.
It's absolutely my wife.
But like I can see an aspect of that, but I can also see an aspect of maybe a little natural selection there, where maybe those people won't have children.
Right. So like there are people who like their lives just cannot move forward. They feel stuck. Like whatever it is that will make you feel stuck. Like since it seems like you both are like family dudes, but like if you were like a single person and just unable to get a date or something, and your job's maybe going to some like we would
go to
feel
Malaysia and fucking
yeah. But then there are people who like that kind of life just seems like they would just be stuck. But then when they're like freezing their asses off naked in the jungle about to die, that's the only point in their life where they feel like fulfilled.
Yeah.
Like that there's a certain kind of there's a certain kind of cat that's like
I get that. And I mean I don't want to go too much into the episode because I want people to listen, but I don't think that was the lesson that they took from it. I think that they kind of realized that they had it pretty good. That's what I took away
that's
from
interesting.
it. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Just like the ride home when they were. I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
we'll talk about it off.
Okay,
there,
that's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's interesting.
Especially because it's the season finale. I don't want to give away.
Yeah.
Like we all know that they didn't die.
They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't.
But-
They didn't die.
yeah.
Yeah.
He still has his YOLO
and
tattoo.
for me, I mean, I spent a lot of years doing shit I didn't want to do and making a lot of money doing shit I didn't want to do. I threw it all away. And with that, I threw in my credit score and all kinds of stuff.
What were you doing that you weren't?
I was a mechanic.
Okay.
And I wanted to become a mechanic because I love working on cars. And becoming a mechanic, I started to hate working on cars.
Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah.
And I got out of it. I went back to school. I met my fiance. So it was the best thing that ever happened to me to go down that path. But I started to hate it. Hated it so much. I dreaded going to work every day. I dreaded that grind, and it's
Same here.
like being a mechanic. It's 8 to 5. No matter what the fucking weather is, it's winter. You're getting dripped on all day. Your feet are wet all day. During the summer, there's no air conditioning. It's 110 degrees in the shop. That fucking shit sucks. If I could just build hot rods all day, I would have loved it. But you can't do that.
No.
That's not how it works. So I made a lot of money, and then the economy crashed, and all of a sudden I wasn't making a lot of money doing the same bullshit job. I got laid off for the last time. I said, I'm done. I'm done with it.
My dad was a mechanic for, I don't know,
He still is.
40 years. Well, he's a service manager,
Yeah.
but yeah, he's still in the business. But his biggest gripe about becoming a mechanic was, he goes, the car comes in, you fix the car, it leaves, it's still the car. He goes, at least a carpenter has a product at the end.
Yeah.
And that's you could say that for an artist or a musician or whatever the hell, but that's how he
Yeah,
thinks.
he's a creative. He was a creative guy who wasn't creating.
Exactly.
He was just
exactly, and
putting
now
out fires.
But now he's a super technician. He's the guy you go to if you need to figure something out. He knows everything about fixing cars. But I think that creative part of him died with that.
Yeah.
Because of his career choice. He also got divorced when I was 3. I was 3 when he got divorced, and it was my brother was 1. So he had to dig in also.
Yeah,
but
at certain points, it's about surviving.
If you ask him today, if he's happy and content with life and where he's at, he would absolutely say yes. He wouldn't even hesitate. Like
But he had 20 years of grind.
Yeah, he had to grind it out. But now he's sitting back. It's Father's Day. All of my stepbrother's there with his daughter, his 2-year-old daughter. I'm there with Brooke and my sister-in-law Karina, who's my nephew. He's 1, and then all my step siblings and my brother and everything like that, all surrounding him at this barbecue. That to him is
it made it worth it.
Yeah, that kind of thing makes it worth it for him. So that's the YOLO thing. It's just like it's just all how you perceive.
Yeah. It's not going to be having survived 18 days in a jungle or a
glacier. That might not be your payoff, even if you think it might be.
Yeah. And for me, like when I left, it was nothing but hardship after that. But I feel happier. I have a lot less money in the bank.
Hell yeah.
But actually sometimes a lot more because I've adjusted my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But
keep this place.
I make a lot less, but I'm more comfortable. I'm happier. I like what I'm doing. I feel like I work a mile from my house too, so I feel like I'm doing my part to not be a piece of shit to this planet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I woke up this morning, so it was 55 degrees. I'm like, I'm driving.
It was 55 degrees this morning?
Yeah, it was pretty fucking cold.
I woke up at 10 o'clock. Yeah. No, I woke up early today.
Yeah.
There's that too.
But you had your YOLO thing. Your YOLO thing was quitting that job.
Yeah.
That was your YOLO
Well, I
thing.
didn't quit. I was laid off, meaning that I was
You
fired.
changed your career.
I was
quit.
fired.
You quit.
Yeah, I looked my boss dead in the eye after 10 years and was like, I'm quitting this job to go work at a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And he was like, what?
You're welcome. I convinced him to do it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
the secret to happiness
Cool.
is
Just
YOLO.
do shit that you like. Not YOLO. YOLO is kind of a problem.
All right.
Carpe diem.
Yep. How we doing? good?
I think we're done.
That's
All
the
right.
one, yeah. Sorry, we go long for him.
Cool.
Well, we were gonna try and do an hour and a half, but that didn't happen.
All right.
We're getting better.
Yeah.
Hour and 40's good.
Yeah.
We do these like 2-hour bangers that are just like by the end of it we're like, ah, you know the good thing about So yeah, want to thank Barry Lamb coming on the show. Hi-Phi Nation, Hi-Phi H-I-P-H-I, modern philosophical podcast.
Thank you very much, guys. Yep.
This is great. I really appreciate it.
All right.
I think we classed it up for the first half, and then we drank too much.
I don't know. I thought we were good.
Yeah, it was
I'm
great.
fine.
Oh, we have no titles, which means that we classed it up.
Yeah, I mean, I have Christian fan fiction.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that was a good discussion. Right there. All right, guys. Great to be here.
Yeah, man. All right, you got to go.
All right.
It seems. So we'll see you guys next week. Lou Agresta is going to be in
95%.
95%. Lou Agresta is going to be here talking about Grimmer Space and his incredibly successful Kickstarter promotion for that. If you don't know what Grimmer Space is, tune in next week.
Linger longer.
Thanks a lot, man.